Hi everyone, welcome to the October 2022 edition of Farsight's Human News, the remote viewing news forecast show that tells you what is going to happen, not what did happen. I'm Aziz from Farsight. Before I go on, let's recap about what happened with our last human news forecast. The big hit was Kahmia's session, where she reported on a major flooding event involving land, boats, structures on and near water. A large-scale flooding affected a large area. That, of course, was Hurricane Ian, which hit Florida in late September and produced exactly that type of damage. The strength of the hurricane and the amount of damage was entirely unexpected. So that was a very interesting report. Two of our other remote viewers, Shantae and Yeme Jeaneé, reported on a fire affecting an urban area. Structures were collapsing. Subjects were at risk. The closest news event that fits that report involves the ongoing fighting in Ukraine. This is not unexpected since the war has been going on since February, but still it is a major event. A related report by Intysam involves an event in a small urban setting where there was a confrontation between two groups involving what appeared to be a land dispute. That is the major thing happening in Ukraine right now. Russia is trying to take some land that was part of Ukraine and make it part of Russia. It is clearly a report involving the ownership of land, and there is a push and a pull between two groups involving the ownership of land. That was a huge news event for September. The final report was by myself, where I reported on a group of subjects who approached a structure in an urban area, broke into the structure, and pulled out an older male subject. It almost looked like the activity of a mob, but at this time, it is unclear which news event this may have been referring to. So we had one unexplained event and 4 clear hits. Again, not a bad month for September. From the comments in our forums, we observed that some of you may have wondered why our reports for September did not describe the death of Queen of England. Well, our reports are not supposed to be comprehensive of all major events of the month. We highlight select events, and we are not in complete control of which events are selected. But also, the death of the Queen of England may be a special kind of event that our remote viewers may not pick up. Let me explain a pattern that we have noticed. Now, I know a lot of people from the UK may disagree with this, but our perspective is that as remote viewers, the death of the Queen of England may not have been a big event. Essentially, we had an elderly woman who died of natural causes. Lots of people turned out for the funeral, but was that enough of an event such that it would attract the attention of our viewers? The event was heavily reported by the media, of course, but we consider that the mainstream media is more of a sandbox media. And the meaning of this is that the stories in the mainstream media are designed to keep the masses psychologically contained within a mental sandbox. Let's think about the worldwide significance of the Queen's death. In terms of its essential elements, the Crown owns a lot of property, but it seems to be mostly inherited property, and some people may not agree that the Crown should even own or control said property. The royals don't seem to do much with that property except to own it. The royals appear to be essentially celebrities, rich and famous people who do not do much of anything. They have a large following, but so do a lot of celebrities. The royals are not rock stars. Rock stars give concerts, and those concerts are physical events that attract a large following. So rock stars do stuff that makes them famous, but celebrities are famous without really having to do stuff. So we have a case of what some might call celebrity worship and the natural death of an elderly celebrity. Is that the type of event that our remote viewers would be attracted to? To be honest, remote viewing future news events is a new thing, and we really do not know the full parameters of the phenomenon. We know it works since we do report on major and unexpected events, but some events that are reported on in the news don't get picked up by our remote viewers, and it seems that the normal death of famous people by natural causes may not be enough of an event to attract the attention of our remote viewers. We are learning as we go with this project, but we have begun to see a pattern in our reports. For our reports to get a hit, the events seem to require physical activity that is noticeable and quite significant. Let me give you another example that we think about. The Ukraine war. Why does that war seem to come back to our viewers each month in some way? We have a theory about this. It may be that this war turns out to have a major effect on the world affairs in the future, and the full trajectory of this war may be particularly important historically. Stuff happens, but in the history that is being written each month during the course of this war, this stuff ends up being very significant. Let me speculate a bit. According to mainstream reports, at this point in the war, it seems that Russia may lose the war if it continues as it has been going. The Ukrainian military is slowly becoming a formidable foe, and the Russian army seems to be falling apart, and domestic dissident inside Russia seems to be growing. Now, it is unclear how this could turn out differently without some major turn of events. The clear worry is that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, may try to use tactical nuclear weapons to subdue the Ukrainians. He may run out of other options, and simply walking away from the war would destroy his ability to stay in power. Well, if he does try to use tactical nuclear weapons, we have the likelihood that the Western nations would try to prevent that. Even extraterrestrials may get involved in some way, maybe even in a way that many people can actually see. It seems unlikely that Russia could use such weapons and simply get away with it. So something major seems likely to happen with this war. If this is how the war is going to turn out, then updates on the war would make sense. And it would be understandable why our viewers keep picking up on stuff ongoing in the war. There are lots of wars, but that particular war may be particularly significant. We will simply have to wait and see how this all turns out in order to understand everything. That is why it is so important for all of you to continue to follow our human news reports. We are simply learning a lot of stuff in the process of bringing you these reports, and you are learning along with us. You are clearly ahead of the curve. I want to again emphasize that our viewers do these human news reports with only one session each. With many of our other projects, such as our mysteries projects, the viewers return to the target more than once to get enough details to sort out what is actually going on. So, in our view, getting all this stuff correct with only one session each is pretty good. Now, let me announce our next major mysteries project, the controllers of the reptilians. You heard right. For quite a while now, we at Farsight have thought that the reptilian extraterrestrials seem to be controlled by someone or something else. Understand that the reptilians are Isbys, just like everyone else. An Isby is someone who simply is for the purpose of being. While we are all Isbys, our physical bodies are just shells. Extraterrestrials understand this completely, and they can change bodies easily. But our body is needed in order to operate in this physical realm. So the type of body you live in matters a lot. Humans don't understand this only because Earth is maintained as a prison planet where its population is mind-wiped before birth. Most humans don't even understand that their physical bodies are not who they really are, but that doesn't happen to many extraterrestrials, including the reptilians. Other than that, reptilian Isbys are the same as human Isbys. They are not superior to humans in any way, at least as Isbys. But the reptilian physical forms have numerous suspicious characteristics, and they seem highly susceptible to manipulation. They seem mentally challenged with respect to feeling emotions and empathy. They mostly don't feel them, or in some way they can't feel them. Their physical brains may be influenced or designed in such a way to not feel the emotions. Plus, they have remarkable telepathic abilities as well as neural engagement capabilities, which are the abilities to influence the thoughts of others. All of this extra stuff seems to be genetically and artificially enhanced. Without those enhancements, they are no different than anyone else. But consider this, they have a uniformity in the way that they think, and divergent thoughts are not allowed in their collective. They have technology that influences their mental capabilities, and they have brain wiring that limits their ability to empathize with others. Well, don't you want to know who is controlling the reptilians? Do they have their own authoritarian leader, a director who is controlling the reptilian masses? Or is there someone else who is separate from the reptilians who is controlling them? Is there one or many of these controllers? Do the controllers have their own organization? Friends, we dug deep with one of Farsight's most daring projects yet. On October 15th, you will find out, only on farsightprime.com. The controllers of the reptilians. I think that you will really want to see this Mysteries project. It will change the way that you see the entire extraterrestrial situation forever. October 15th, only on farsightprime.com. Also, I want to make a comment regarding our last Mysteries project, the Battle of Dulce. In that Mysteries project, we investigated a report made by Philip Schneider about the physical shootout between American military personnel and some ETs in an underground base in the American Southwest. I think it is important for everyone to understand that our projects are always independent of anything said by any person outside of Farsight. So our Dulce project is not about Philip Schneider. We have no way of knowing if a person is simply telling the truth, lying, or simply deluded. However, lots of people say things that seem to have at least a grain of truth. And we have often tested out parts of what they say with our projects. We evaluate whether or not there may be a grain of truth in what they say, not by judging their character, not by believing in them, but rather by seeing if there is some logic to what is being claimed. At Farsight, we have done many projects that suggest that there are some very nasty extraterrestrials who actually do have underground bases on American soil. It only made sense for us to think that there would be some in the US military who would eventually attempt a rescue of some sort of the humans held captive in these bases, or even to try to force some extraterrestrials to leave those places, or some sort of conflict in some sense of the word. Somebody in the military would eventually have tried to do this. So we figured that given the interaction between these two forces, there would very likely have been a shootout with the extraterrestrials in at least one underground base, at least once. So that is what we investigated with our Dulce project. We don't know if the battle happened exactly where Philip Schneider said it happened, or when he said it happened. Again, our project does not target Philip Schneider, and it does not depend on him or what he claimed, but he raised the idea of a shootout, and the battle that we witnessed in the report matched in its essential characteristics a shootout between some American military personnel and some very nasty extraterrestrials in an underground base in the American Southwest. And that is what we wanted to investigate. So I hope that you all get a chance to watch that project also, available now on farsightprime.com. The participating American military personnel may have lost that battle, but they deserve our recognition that they were extraordinarily brave in making the attempt. Moving on. In a few days, on Wednesday, October 5th, our director Courtney Brown will give his monthly live stream intelligence briefing, and he will be describing the only way that humans can permanently free themselves from this prison planet. The title of this intelligence briefing is Eternal and Absolute Resistance. Be on the lookout for our free email newsletter announcing that this live stream event is occurring. Again, Wednesday, October 5th. And on Friday, October 7th, Intysam will be giving an instructional live stream lesson on our SRV remote viewing methods. You will learn a lot regardless of your skill level. Intysam is an experienced remote viewing instructor, so you will want to see this. It will be as educational as it will be fun. Again, be on the lookout for our free email newsletter that will announce the exact time of the live stream event for Friday, October 7th. Moving on. For those of you who want personalized instruction in remote viewing, Yeme Jeaneé and Intysam are teaching remote viewing both individually and in groups. Our methods are sufficiently complex that we use pre-printed templates for our sessions. Yeme and Intysam can work with you individually or in groups as you learn to use these methods. Our approaches address a wide range of applications that we do here at Farsight, including investment evaluations and forecasting. We do lots of stuff that nobody else does, and it's a big subject. But for those of you who are interested, Yeme and Intysam will show you how to do what we do. Be patient in learning any of our methods. Nothing that we do was learned in a day. Also, understand that when Yeme and Intysam teach remote viewing, no one at Farsight gets any financial benefit from this. Yeme and Intysam do this entirely on their own. Remember also that there is a large collection of instructional videos on farsightprime.com. Moving on. How do you hear about all of our activities that we do at Farsight so that you can participate and get the latest when they happen, including our live streams? To start with, we use our email list and YouTube to make our major event announcements. So there are two things that you need to do. First, you need to subscribe to our YouTube channel and remember to click on the notifications bell that appears after you subscribe. That is the only way that YouTube will notify you of our new events, especially our live stream events. Just subscribing doesn't actually do anything. The notifications bell is the important part, but that only notifies you of the things that we release on YouTube. To be notified about the things that we release on farsightprime.com, which you can watch using our Apple and Android apps on the web and on your home TV, you need to subscribe to our free email newsletter found on our website at farsight.org. You can also allow our apps to notify you of our new releases on farsightprime.com. Be sure to do all three things. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Farsight, and remember to click on the notifications bell, and then subscribe to our free email newsletter that you can find on our website. And finally, go to the settings of our app and allow it to give you notifications of our new releases on farsightprime.com. The links for YouTube and our newsletter are in the description area below this video, and the app is, well, it's on your phone. Those are how we announce what we do. We never send out spam, and we never give our subscriber lists to anyone else for any purpose. Now let's move on to this month's Human News Forecast for October 2022. Remember, we can always be wrong, and all remote viewing must be seen as an experiment, not a certainty. But look at the data for yourself and make your own decisions, and then let's watch the month roll out to see what actually happens. We have 5 remote viewers who participated in this month's project: Kahmia Dunson, Yeme Jeaneé, Intysam, Shantae, and myself, Aziz Brown. These reports are amazing to watch. It is best if you just watch them for yourself without me trying to explain them in advance. So let's begin our forecast for October 2022. I will return after all of the reports are presented to help pull everything together.
Starting out, I have level topography here, man-made land and natural land. There's structures on the base surface, many structures. It looks like a city here. A decent sized city. There are subjects inside of these structures on the base surface. And then there's subjects like just on the base surface outside the structures as well. There's also a non-surface structure here. It seems to be kind of like right over the city. And it kind of has like a wide part in the middle of it, and then the front is more narrow. So it doesn't really look like a hat. That's what the structure looks like if you're kind of facing it head on. So there's this non-surface structure here. I hear a lot of rumbling and like shaking. It feels like almost like everything around this area is shaking in a sense, like if a big car or something was like a big truck or something was like driving through, just shaking like that. And then I also hear like this roaring, a lot of rumbles. It just sounds very loud and not just like city busy loud, but just like loud, like something else is going on outside of just city noises. There are also subjects inside of this non-surface structure. There are male and female subjects inside this non-surface structure. And then lastly, I'm seeing just a lot of like yellows and like bright colors, and then also just like tans and like grays, but a lot of like yellow gold colors here too. For my next visual, I have again this level topography here. I can kind of see that there's water. These structures are like nearby some water, so it does kind of look like it resides either on a coast of some sorts, but just a very large body of water around these structures as well. It also, okay, so I got these big structures again. I'm in a city of some sorts. And now I can kind of see like that there's a lot of energetics in air, so it's very much so like energetics all over the place, and it all seems to be located pretty high in the sky. It doesn't seem like it's coming from the base surface. It seems like the energetics are coming from above. Within these energetics, I do see this non-surface structure again. The non-surface structure kind of, has this rounded top to it, and then like these little wing-looking things that come out on the side, and then like that. Now it kind of just, this is what it looks like from the front too, okay? So it kind of looks like I'm looking at it head on. A lot of energetics coming from this non-surface structure, like all around, completely surrounded in energetics. Like I said, there are subjects inside of this non-surface structure too, male and female subjects. A lot of stuff kind of falling from the air. You can literally see like debris, just little pieces of stuff falling out of the sky from this non-surface structure, and just falling down into the city, basically. Focusing on the target event here, I see the city, a lot of surface structures here. And then you can kind of see this kind of water in the background. Looks like it's just on the edge or something. Okay, so focusing on the target event, got this city here by some water. This is the non-surface structure that's like here too, right? You can feel the energetics kind of swirling in and around this object. So I believe that the energetics, originated from this non-surface structure, like it's exploded or something. There's a lot of panic going on. There's a lot of movement happening, but it doesn't, like, it's not scattered. It just seems like a lot is like it's shaking. You know what I mean? Like everything is just shaking. it doesn't seem like there's really any survivors here. It doesn't really feel like there's a lot of subjects on this non-surface structure either. So maybe it's like a smaller type of non-surface structure, you know, like private or something like that. But this non-surface structure is on the smaller side. It doesn't contain as many, like that many subjects in here. And it does feel like all of these subjects don't make it out of this explosion. I see a lot of blacks, I see a lot of grays. I can smell like the smoke and the heat in the air because the surrounding air is a little cooler. So it's like, it's kind of cool here outside, but right where the energetics are, like real hot, a lot of heat, thick, smoky air. And yeah, just another thing that I'm feeling here is that it just feels very abrupt. It doesn't feel like anything that like anyone really saw coming. It's just something like a random event that has happened here. And everybody, like you can feel the subjects here that are witnessing it are even like in shock almost. But yeah, so moving to the cause of the target event. Okay. I see this non-surface structure. It is on the base surface now. I do see a subject like working on the non-surface structure, touching it, moving things. It does feel like this is like their job, you know, like the subject kind of knows what they're doing to a certain extent. So it doesn't feel like any like malpractice or like malplay, foul play or anything like that is taking place here. So I just, you know, see the subject working on this non-surface structure. There's a sense that there was a mistake that was made, though, in some sort of like the maintenance of the plane. It does feel like a mistake was made, a step was skipped, you know, and I wouldn't say it was necessarily like negligence, but it does feel like something that could have been easily avoided, just wasn't this time around. And like the last thing I want to kind of tell you guys is that this non-surface structure, right, like, okay, I drew that one there, but I'm trying that one. So this non-surface structure, it's got the big old like, wings on it, like I said, and like a little undercarriage, and then the front, right? Okay, so you can honestly feel the explosion and where it kind of starts. So it starts on like one side over here, kind of near this wing type looking thing, and from there it just starts to take over like the whole plane. You can just feel it move from, or not the plane, like the whole non-surface structure. But you can just feel it moving like all the way over here, and starts on one side, explodes, quickly it takes over the other side, and then the whole thing just feels like it collapses on itself and like explodes again. I can literally see like, the smoke coming off of like the debris that's falling down. So it's like, this is all smoke, just black smoke. You can just see smoke in the sky, smoke like raining down onto the city below. But yeah, you can see the smoke. Nobody really survives here. I don't sense anybody surviving this explosion of this non-surface structure. And yeah, all because something was faulty within this part of the non-surface structure, and that is what caused it to explode. And yeah, that is all I have for this target.
All right, so for this target, I have what looks like irregular topography. I'm seeing there are mountains, multiple mountains that are rising and falling. This whole environment seems to be quite natural. very natural, except a few structures that are somewhere here. Okay, so these structures, they are quite rudimentary, and I'm only sensing like about 6 or 7 of them, and it looks like all of them were put up in quite a hurry. They look very, very basic. And when I touch them, they seem like quite thin material. So I was deducting like steel, this type of metal like they use as roofs, corrugated roof, like metal. That's kind of what it looks like. And these structures, like I said, not so many of them. So I was deducting encampments. It didn't seem like a large area by any means. And also they seem a little misplaced because of how natural this area is. Like there's nothing, everything is natural except for these few structures that are just, were obviously put up here in a hurry by the looks of it. Behind the structures, I can see there are lines. And then when I touch them, they do feel somewhat prickly. I think they're barbed wire. Give me a sec while I fill them in. And when you look from on top, you can tell they're trying to form some sort of a parameter. Okay, that's what I got. I can't really sense subjects outside, but I am seeing them. I can't sense them inside here. Inside here, there's not very much space anyway. All I'm seeing, like, if I look at this right here, I'm looking inside. It's just objects that are stacked. So it looks like these are structures mostly for storage. Yeah, they're not really for like people to stay in or anything. Yeah, just items stacked. Some of them have these like long things that are stacked, like long objects. But when I look through, all of them are kind of just like filled with a bunch of stuff. And then there are subjects outside this area. So the subjects are just walking around, looking at one guy, and it looks like he has like a baseball cap. His arms are showing. He's wearing, I think he's wearing like a vest. And then he's carrying something that looks, an object that looks kind of like a gun. And there are multiple of these subjects. So that's what he's carrying. There's multiple just walking around here. So here's another one. This one, not all of them are carrying stuff. This guy's just walking around. Yep, subjects all around. Something to note is I'm smelling gasoline. Like the air isn't very clean here. It's like petrol or gasoline or something like that. Something that, you know, would like sting your nose. That's what this place smells like. I'm also picking up some water. It's not extensive though, and it looks like it's on the base of some of these mountains. Just a little bit of water over here, like in the distance. It's very in the distance. It's not anywhere close to this. The light here is quite dim. It's dimish, darkish. I'm also picking up a non-surface structure. It's a small one. It looks quite small. That's right. Should have switched up the color. So that's the non-surface structure. When I probe inside this non-surface structure, it's mostly mechanical. And the movements are very rapid. They like zigzag. It's like zoop, zoop, zoop. So I was deducting drone. Usually when you probe non-surface structure, you usually find subjects inside. But for this particular non-surface structure, it's all mechanical inside. And based on the size and the movement, I'm deducting drone. Okay, so I will move to the target event. First, let's start with the target activity and see what we find. Okay, so target activity. I'm seeing these subjects. Some of them are coming closer together. Like a subject. And it looks like they're communicating just because of their stance, because of how they're like leaning to each other, their body language. Focusing on the activity. These subjects just scatter. It looks like they notice this non-surface structure up here, and then I just see that like they scatter. All of them just like whoop, they all just go away. And then something that wasn't here before is energetics. I start feeling like a wave of energetics. And when I look below, it looks like one of these structures is actually, it looks like now it's on fire. So I'm guessing it had something to do with a non-surface structure. Deduct drone strike because of the sudden energetics that appear here. Okay, so basically the target event has something to do with these subjects being here with these structures that seem to just have been put up in a hurry. Maybe they're trying to blend in, maybe they're not trying to stand out or anything. The non-surface structure arrives, the subjects notice it, scatter, then suddenly I'm starting to feel this like heat and fire energetics. Let's do a collective deep mind probe on these subjects. Okay, so a lot of stress and anxiety around their emotions currently. I'm sensing some worry, mostly based on the long term, like they're worried about their long term. Let's see, so what was the purpose of this location? It seems like it was surrounding money. The items here, when I move back and forth between time, like before this happened, there's a coming and going, a coming and going. And it looks like whatever these are, you know, based on these, they were supposed to make it somewhere else to where it would have collected money. It would have like paid out. So that's the, it's like a drug bust. It feels like it's something like that. Clearly that's very high level. So I'm just gonna stick to the low level things, that whatever was happening here, they got caught. Clearly it doesn't seem like legal activities, as these people, like all of them, just they're carrying guns, but they're not cops, you know, they're not soldiers. So let me ask, what's in the structures? I'm sensing something like weapons along with some illegal substances. So deduct like drugs and stuff like that. And if I fast forward into time, that's a little clock. Let's see. This area kind of just a lot more subjects come inside, and I'm seeing that some of these have started to disappear. I think they're getting torn down. Probably whatever items that were in here are being like confiscated and seized.
We've got extensive base surface, land, very natural environment, also have man-made qualities. There's water nearby, very cool, crisp air, feels like fall. There's surface structures, very city-like, multiple structures. Subjects, both male and female. Bright light, I'm seeing. I hear talking voices. It's a very cool temperature. I've got raised land with structures here and water, and then what appears to be a structure in the water or on the water. And so I have structures on land and or on water with foliage around as well. The water is moving near the surface structures, like really close, too close for comfort. I'm seeing a lot of what looks like downpour, a lot of wetness going downward wetness. Deducting hurricane, I'm deducting tsunami. I see a structure in the midst of this, and it makes me feel like a shipwreck, so I'm deducting shipwreck. There's a lot of movement via the water and the structures, tumultuous, agitated movement. There's fear. It feels like a structure is stuck or stranded in aggressive waters. Subjects have fear. Some may be hurt, but I do not sense any deaths. There is definite danger. It's a dangerous situation. The subjects have on casual clothing. But yes, this is a very dangerous situation.
For this target, my first visual includes a subject moving in a more or less linear direction down a natural slope. The base surface has brown hues and overall relatively irregular topography. There were natural smells and foliage all over the environment. In addition, I noticed a solo structure and multiple subjects, but one subject in particular stood out as this was the subject that I had noticed moving down the irregular slope. Overall, however, the environment was basically a hilly, foliage-filled irregular terrain full of natural objects along with dark green and brownish hues. Looking here at a wider angle, you can see the irregular terrain once again. However, now it includes the solo structure that I had previously noticed. My first visual of the structure seemed to show a man-made structure on a slightly less irregular portion of land with a man-made road leading up to the structure itself. There seemed to be multiple subjects in and around the structure at the time. The structure was by itself and still surrounded by natural foliage in a natural environment. Zooming out even further, I noticed a very large mountain. This showed that the natural elements of the environment itself were quite vast, and the irregular topography seemed more pronounced from a wider perspective. The most activity that I picked up so far in the session seems to be centered around one solo subject moving quickly through this natural environment. It seems like the subject started running down a hill and rushing through the natural objects also present in the environment. When probing for the center of the target, I started to notice a mass of something, matching the speed and frantic activity that the solo subject moving down the natural slope exhibited. Doing a quick deep mind probe of the solo subject reveals that the subject is in a high adrenaline state and is hyper-focused on calculating his next steps through the natural environment. Probing now for the target activity, it seems to become clear that there is a large brown mass running or moving quickly behind the subject. I deducted a bear, but it clearly looks like a living something that was rushing towards the subject down this slope. Moving to the target event, it becomes clear that the bear-like animal did catch up to the target subject eventually, and from the looks of it, seems to be biting into and pulling at the subject's arm and then the rest of the subject's body. That is all the data that I have for this target.
For my first visual, I have a base surface with irregular topography, seeing multiple mountains. There's a lot of natural land here. I have cold temperatures. I'm seeing also a few structures, surface structures kind of scattered throughout these mountains, have extensive foliage. And bright natural light in this area. Seeing also this weird, just a shape that's coming to me. It feels like a man-made object, but I'm sensing like movement and energetics being generated by this object. So for my next visual, I'm seeing one of these structures is like a large structure, and I'm seeing these this shape again towards the corners here. There's like movement, very like slow, kinetic, energetic, slow movement, and also like some radiant energetics coming off of these objects on the structure. And nearby, I'm sensing, there's a lot of natural land, but I'm also sensing water and movement of water near this structure. This is a large structure. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. What I'm seeing is a lot of these hilly areas. I have this large structure. And there's like extensive foliage kind of like surrounding this structure, but I'm also seeing these other clusters of smaller structures, and they seem to be connected, or they're like accessible with these man-made areas of land. My deduction is that it's just like a winding road, but these areas are like man-made land, but this is mostly a natural environment with a lot of foliage surrounding these areas. And looking at these smaller structures, they do have like an old or like a rustic kind of appearance to them, but they're definitely very hard and it's like sturdy structures. I'm seeing like brown, red hues, and there are like a few subjects around these smaller structures. I'm not seeing like too much activity throughout these like mountainous areas. So going back to this like large structure, I'm picking up multiple subjects inside. I'd say it's like around like 10 subjects inside this structure. They're kind of spread throughout, all kind of like they're doing tasks, but still not picking up like a lot of activity. It's noticeably quiet here. I also see like a few vehicles on the base surface outside. So taking a look at the subjects inside, these subjects feel fairly young. Like if I'm making a deduction, I would say like these subjects are under the age of 40. They look fairly young, but they are very like nicely dressed. I'm seeing very nice like suits, jackets. Dress shoes, nice shoes, and the female subjects are wearing like fancy dresses. So it's not really clear at the moment like what is these subjects' relation to one another, because they're not really interacting with one another too much, but they are on this very large structure, and I'll say it looks nice, like nicely decorated inside. It's kind of dim lighting in here. I'm seeing a lot of reds.
red hues. So I'm gonna go inside this structure and just kind of walk around to see what's going on inside. So I'm just like, I'm seeing this one large room towards the back area. And there's a hallway that leads to a few smaller rooms. And then there's like the entrance here. So there's multiple rooms in this structure, one large room. Oops. A few subjects, kind of all throughout. I'm picking up 2 subjects in this room. They feel like they're actually kind of avoiding each other. Not hearing a lot of talking. The subjects feel uncomfortable being here, actually. So so I'm feeling there's a lot of just uncomfortable. I don't know, these subjects feel really weird. But I'm also picking up a very unpleasant smell. And it seems like it's, as I'm walking around, it's like stronger in some areas and fades away in certain areas, but it seems like this smell is strongest from this particular, like, one room. And these subjects, other subjects are avoiding one another, but definitely avoiding this room. So, So probing in, these 2 subjects are, these are not currently living subjects. They are female. I have 2 female non-living subjects. And they are fairly young, like the other subjects in this structure. And it's not really, like, as I'm looking, I don't see any noticeable, like, injuries or anything wrong with them. Like, it's not clear why they're not living in this structure. But they're just in this room, not living in the other subjects here. I just kind of not really paying any attention to that. So I'm also picking up a male subject. He is very nicely dressed, but his face looks very, and just his, like, his clothes are nice, but he still looks a bit disheveled, like he hasn't really been, like, taking care of himself. Like, his facial hair is, like, overgrown, and his hair looks a bit kind of crazy. And doing, like, I'll call this subject A. So if I do a deep mind probe on subject A, he is, like, it's kind of all over the place. It's not, he doesn't actually seem, he's definitely aware that these 2 non-living subjects are in the structure with him, but he's not, it doesn't feel like he has, like, a real connection to them, but he's more distraught for like some reason surrounding him. Like maybe something will happen to him, a deduction, maybe something will happen to him because these subjects are here, or maybe he brought them here, I don't know, but he's trying to figure out like what to do with the fact that these two non-living female subjects are in this structure with all these other subjects. And as I like probe some of the other subjects that are in this structure, it feels like they're being very cautious, like they're kind of walking on eggshells around subject A. There's some reason they don't trust him. They don't want to really speak their mind around subject A. And it's feeling like subject A is like, he feels like he's responsible for these two subjects, though he's just not sad that they're not living, but he does still feel responsible for whatever happened to them here. Okay, so I'm getting another visual. More from like outside of the structure. And what I'm seeing is there's a vehicle. It kind of has this like boxy shape. It's a very long vehicle, and I see subject A is in this vehicle, along with a few other subjects, and they're driving very quickly. And I would deduce that this is before subject A and some of these other subjects got to this structure. Like they very quickly arrived here. And I'm also hearing a lot more talking sounds, and these subjects feel like they're excited, or maybe just have like a lot of adrenaline, something. They're moving really fast in this vehicle with subject A. And I'm also, as I'm listening to them, the language is definitely not, it doesn't sound like English. If I had to make a deduction, it kind of sounds like Italian, but they're speaking, and then when we're inside the structure, there's like no talking. Everyone's just kind of like avoiding each other, acting like they're not there, kind of like numb. I don't know. Yeah. I would say though that if I was around subject A myself, I don't think I would feel very comfortable around him. Like he has a nice appearance, but something just seems like the way he thinks is just not, I don't know, like not very coherent, not thinking of consequences, I guess. He's not someone I would feel comfortable around, but yeah. All right, that is what I have.
Okay, so let's draw some conclusions from these data. October 2022 is going to be an interesting month. The reported events for October seem to be quite diverse. We have an attack by a wild animal in the wilderness, a non-surface structure attacking subjects in structures, hiding weapons and drugs, a non-surface structure exploding above an urban area, 2 dead female subjects in a large structure, and what looks like a marine accident. Thus, it seems that no single event will dominate the news in October. Again, these sessions point to a very interesting month of October. Now we will wait and see what actually happens. So that is it for our October 2022 edition of Farsight's Human News, the news before it happens. Thank you for watching. Please join us again next month in November 2022 for another look into the future of Earth humans. Also on FarsightPrime.com, be sure to look out for our next major mysteries project that will appear in October. The Controllers of the Reptilians, our live stream events, the Farsight ET News, the Major Intelligence Briefing, more conversations with Harvey, as well as new Farsight economic forecasts. And remember, we do Farsight at Farsight. Farsight is our style of remote viewing, and vocabulary is important in these changing times. I am Aziz Brown from Farsight. Stay ahead of the curve. Let the mainstream fade in the dust. Be there now.